Orangetown Arc Part 1. In my last video, I left out a small but significant detail that leads to the beginning of the Orangetown Arc. And that is when Zoro and Luffy are sailing away and they're hungry, so Luffy stretches up to take out a seagull and it ends up being bigger than he thought, so it ends up, dragging him away in the sky, so Zoro has to chase after him. But anyway, you see Luffy being dragged by this bird, and the bird decides to drop him, and he falls into a town, which you see a very familiar orange-haired girl being confronted by a few pirates. Her name is Nami. Nami decides to use this moment to her advantage and pawns off the three pirates on Luffy, which he easily takes out. Nami sees how strong he is and asks him to join her. He declines. Luffy suddenly remembers how hungry he is, so Nami decides to treat him. So she takes him into this abandoned house and starts feeding him. She explains how she's a thief that robs pirates. Kind of the pot calling the kettle black, if you ask me. She says that she wants to earn 100 million berry no matter what. Luffy asks why, and she says it's a secret, so Luffy doesn't ask anymore. She says that she has the map to the Grand Lines, and Luffy becomes interested. He asks if she's a navigator, and she says she's the best navigator. So now Luffy asks Nami to join his crew. She says no. She says she hates pirates more than anything else in the world. I wonder why. She says she only likes money and oranges. Odd combination, but why not? She looks out the window and sees those pirates from earlier looking for her. She looks at Luffy and says if he accepts her conditions, she'll think of joining his crew. He gets excited and says, sure, I'll do anything. And she says she wants him to go with her to see a man named Buggy. Then she proceeds to tie him up. Nami and Luffy walk up to Buggy's tent, and Nami proceeds to shove Luffy onto the floor. She says that she had captured the thief of the map and is here to return it. Buggy thanks her and asks what was with the change of heart. She explains that she had had a fight with her boss. She asks to join his crew. He says sure. Idiot. They proceed to put Luffy into a cage, then begin to have a party in honor of their new crewmate Nami. During the party, Nami doesn't look very happy, so Buggy decides to cheer her up by preparing a buggy bomb. So they line a cannon onto the edge of the building and put a bomb with what looks like a clown skull and crossbones into the cannon. Buggy tells them to light it, and the cannon fires and destroys half the town. Nami is petrified. Zoro is standing at the harbor. He had finally arrived. He saw the explosion, and the three people he had picked up, I forgot to mention those people earlier. Anyway, they explain that that was the Buggy Bomb. Zoro asks who Buggy is, and they explain that it's their captain. After that, Buggy decides to point the cannon at Luffy. As a favor to Nami, he's gonna blow up her old captain. What a nice guy. I know if someone pointed the cannon at my boss, I'd be pretty goddamn happy. Don't tell my boss. Buggy explains that it's a test of loyalty to her as well. He tells her to light it. But instead of a lighter, he hands her a box of matches with his Jolly Roger symbol on it. To think he took the time to make his own brand of matches. People start chanting for her to shoot, but she seems a little hesitant. Her hands start to shake, and Luffy notices. He says that that's what happens when you're not mentally prepared. She asks what he means by mentally prepared. To kill people at will? She asks if that's the way of the pirates. He says no, to being able to risk your own life. God, Luffy may be an idiot, but when it comes down to it, he knows how to drop the knowledge. Before she's able to react, someone snatches the matches out of her hand and lights the cannon himself. But before he lights the fuse, Nami pulls 3 sections of wood out of her thigh, and somehow they connect together and she hits him in the head. Buggy asks what's the meaning of this, and she says sorry. Luffy asks if she's saving him, and she says no. I just got too excited and it slipped. Okay. Luffy's like, okay, and then he notices that the fuse was lit. Buggy sends 4 of his men after her. She is able to dodge them, run up to the cannon, and grab the fuse with her hands. You see 3 men come up behind Nami, and in an instant, all 3 of them stop in their tracks. Zoro slammed all of them in the face with his swords without even taking them out of their sheaths. Zoro asks if she's injured. She says, "No, I'm fine." Just kinda lit a huge, giant fuse in my hands. Probably got around 3rd-degree burns, but whatever. Just a flesh wound. Luffy's happy to see him, and Zoro asks what's going on. Like, last time I saw you, you were being carried away by a bird, and now you're in a cage. Everyone seems stunned that Zoro is there, and Buggy asks if he's there for his head. Zoro says, "Nah, I'm not interested." Buggy still wants to fight him, and Buggy begins to charge. And in an instant, you see a silhouette of Buggy being sliced in half. Buggy falls to the ground, also missing his arm and most of his leg. Zoro sheathes his swords, but then all of a sudden he gets stabbed in the back. You see Buggy floating behind him, and he begins to put himself back together. He explains that he had eaten the Bara fruit, and he can split himself into pieces, and he is unaffected by swords or knives or anything sharp. Luffy yells that attacking from behind is cowardly and calls him a big nose. Big mistake. Ho ho! Buggy gets pissed off and throws his hand with a dagger at Luffy, and Luffy catches it in his teeth and says that he's gonna beat the crap out of him. And he breaks the dagger with his teeth. Buggy and his crew begin to laugh, and so does Luffy, and Luffy tells Zoro to run. Nami gets confused. Why would Luffy tell the man who came to save him to run? They look at Luffy, and he's sitting there in his cage all tied up, smiling, and Zoro goes, "Roger," and he takes off. Well, he tries. Buggy ends up attacking him again, and Zoro slices him up again, and Buggy puts himself back together again. Buggy starts boasting about his Bara fruit, but while he's talking, Zoro is running towards the cannon and flips it, and it's now facing Buggy and his crew, and Nami lights the fuse. To be continued. Thoughts. I like Buggy's abilities, but other than like sword fighting, it's really not all that useful. I mean, he's got some pretty interesting techniques with it, like later in the show, but like other than when he fights Zoro, his attacks really aren't that useful, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem like really it just doesn't seem like a very good devil fruit. I'd feel kind of cheated if that was the fruit that I had chosen out of all the other ones that are out there. I like how, even though Zoro's only been in the series for like maybe 2 episodes, he's already showing up in the nick of time, saving Luffy, being awesome, kicking ass, chewing bubblegum, and I know it's going to happen a lot more in this series, and I think it's kind of funny that he's the one character who just shows up out of nowhere and just gets shit done. As for Nami, I've never been able to understand her bow staff type weapon. Like, I understand it's wood and it's in 3 sections, but how do they connect? It's just 3 cylindrical, like, pieces of wood. How are they able to connect? I understand when it's later, when it's made of metal, and they actually have connecting points, but right now, it just doesn't make sense. As for Luffy, he didn't really do much this episode. I mean, he beat up those couple guys, Other than that, he spent most of the time tied up, eating, or in a cage, about to be blown up. So I guess he didn't really do much this time, but I know he's going to get into some fight later on, so I guess I'll just have to look forward to that. Awards. I think the Badass Award should go to Zoro for showing up, beating up those three guys, taking out Buggy even though he just got back up, taking him out again, and then distracting him when he did that, flipping the cannon. Like, he just seemed like he did the most today, even though he didn't show up until around the end. The O Snap Award, I think, should be when Zoro flipped the cannon, because when you've got no idea what you're gonna do, and you're bleeding out, your friend's in a cage, and the other one, you didn't even know who the hell she is, to think that quickly on your feet, I guess, yeah, it would just be pretty good. There was no really best fight, because really the only fight was, Luffy beat up the minions, and Zoro took out Buggy, but he just put himself back together, so I guess there wasn't really a best fight, so I guess we're just gonna have to wait a little longer for that one. And I think that's about it. That concludes the Orange Town arc Part 1. Stay tuned for Part 2.